How Germany's subsidy war is breaking the European Union and helping Russia. Economic case study. In order to lower the cost of energy for both consumers and enterprises, the German government announced a massive subsidy of $200 billion on September 20, 2022. This news shocked the whole European Union as soon as it was announced. This is a very important deal since the EU's 26 member countries' economies will be directly destroyed by the $200 billion subsidy, giving Russia a clear advantage in choking off the rest of Europe. It is a matter of life or death for Germany, because if they don't distribute the subsidy, it will destroy the German economy and trigger an energy crisis. Therefore, this subsidy rollout is of the utmost priority, not only for Germany but also for the other 26 members of the European Union and the advancing Russian might. One might wonder how a German subsidy could destroy Europe's economies, and that is exactly what we will show you in this video. In the last 10 months, 3 things have happened so far. To begin with, in Europe, Germany was the nation most dependent on Russian gas. Additionally, as of 2021, nearly half of Germany's gas imports come from Russia, surpassing the imports from the next 4 countries. Due to this, when Russia stopped producing gas, Germany's power price increased tenfold, from just 34 euros per megawatt hour to 469. Winter is coming for Europe, which will be added to the current gas scarcity. Therefore, energy consumption has already reached new highs and will do so until December. Finally, it will only take 90 days for levels to drop to a dangerously low level, even if Europe has 90% of its storage full as of September. In conclusion, the lack of storage options, combined with gas scarcity during high consumption, has caused European energy prices to skyrocket. Gas prices are still very high despite the US and other nations assisting Germany and other European nations. In Germany, inflation has reached a record high of 109% due to the sharp rise in production costs. The waters between Russia and Ukraine are severely harming the German economy. Hence, the German economy will collapse if companies cannot sell their goods at reasonable prices during the winter, and Germans have to empty their bank accounts merely to cover their electricity bills. Due to this, the German government has proposed massive subsidies to make up for lost revenue to both the country's citizens and enterprises by covering the cost of electricity. It simply means that the government will carry the energy expense directly or indirectly, just like any other clothing subsidy. As a result, it might either take the form of loans to power firms to keep their operations going, or subsidies, where the government and the general public share the cost of power. Wouldn't any government give out subsidies to stop an economic collapse if it were put in this scenario when businesses and people were going bankrupt? So why do so many European nations and the Western media object to this pay-to subsidy? The fundamental idea behind the European Union must first be understood to grasp this. 27 nations make up the European Union. Each nation has relatively limited resources, including natural resources, trade, and military resources. However, in this situation, the EU countries gain 3 key advantages by banding together as a single entity, rather than as separate nations. First off, cross-border obstacles like import taxes and licenses are hardly any, making trade between EU nations very simple. In addition, because the euro is the official currency in 19 of the 27 EU nations, businesses don't have to spend time converting currencies at each country's border. As a result, they are spared the time and expense of exchange rate commissions. Secondly, suppose these little nations like Luxembourg negotiate with a large nation like India. Compared to India, where they have access to a market of 1.2 billion people. In that case, Luxembourg only has a market of 625,000 people. As a result, India slaps Luxembourg by charging a 20% import charge on goods that Luxembourg businesses sell in India in exchange for a 5% import duty on goods that Indian businesses import into Luxembourg. Thus, larger markets like India have an unfair advantage over smaller nations. However, if the entire European Union were to join India at the negotiating table, there would be a market of 450 million people and a very high per capita income. Additionally, India has a market of 1.2 billion people, but a lower per capita income than other countries. Therefore, the EU will impose heavy import taxes on all Indian products traded throughout the 27-country EU cluster if India tries to intimidate one of them. Thirdly, other advantages exist, such as a military alliance, international travel, integrated financial markets, etc. Let's figure out why so many EU nations object to German mega-subsidies. One can notice the significant economic disparity between the Union's member states if you look at the debt-to-GDP ratio of EU countries as of Q 2021. While Germany's debt-to-GDP ratio was higher than 75%, only France, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Greece have reached 100%. To indicate how difficult this situation is, Sri Lanka's debt-to-GDP ratio was 105 in December of the previous year, right before the financial crisis got out of control. Therefore, if German subsidies start influencing the market in the EU, it will devastate the EU by igniting so-called subsidy wars. It would initially target German customers, since they have greater purchasing power than Spanish or other Europeans. In Germany, they could therefore charge 10 euros a unit in Germany, but not in Spain. People are forced to sell it at 8 euros per unit, since they do not have enough money. So you can see what would happen while German businesses would control Spain's commoditized markets, putting their government's businesses in those developing countries at risk of failure. The problem with this is that even the Spanish government will need to provide subsidies if Spain wants to maintain the marketability of its products. To maintain their products competitive on the market, all of the European Union's member states will eventually need to provide subsidies. Their businesses will cease to exist if they don't do it, since the government won't receive any money. An economic crisis would be further exacerbated. In what is known as a subsidy war, all the nations will be forced to catch up to Germany in terms of subsidies, despite the fact that they have significantly less money in their bank accounts. This is the reason why everyone in the European Union is concerned about German subsidies. What does this signify for the European Union? And how does Putin stand to gain from Germany continuing with these subsidies? According to the analyst, there are 4 options. First, the other EU nations will make every effort to subsidize energy costs and approach a financial crash. If conditions worsen too much, people will take to the streets, clothing will fall to the ground, and the new garment may try a different approach. Secondly, in order to stop German products from harming their economies, the other EU nations may opt to put high import duties on all German goods. In retaliation, Germany may slap import taxes on other EU nations doing business with it. Nevertheless, being Europe's largest market, Germany will be less impacted than other nations, while Germany will be more impacted overall. The third scenario is that the EU as a whole may decide to stop supporting Ukraine and stop buying Russian gas in order to protect the lives of its own citizens as the subsidy war intensifies. Winter becomes colder, energy costs rise, inflation increases, and people begin dying as a result of the cost of living problem. Since no government will risk defending a foreign nation at the expense of its own authority if the citizens of your country turn against NATO, finally there is a chance that Germany would withdraw its subsidy, which would be a nightmare for the country because energy prices there have already increased tenfold. As a result, inflation could increase, the cost of living crisis could get worse, and Germany could be compelled to make a drastic choice, even if it means violating a core EU norm. Consequently, this caused the European Union to collapse. It will now be interesting to observe how they respond, how they handle the situation, how the US assists them, and how Putin takes these new developments. The content in this video is for educational purposes only and hence should not be considered financial advice. So, do let us know which topic we should cover next. If you enjoyed the content, give us a like, and thank you for subscribing to our channel. See you at the next one. Bye.